only ground for many Indigenous people. We recognize the diversity of First Nations who have at one time lived across the territory, as well as the presence of the Métis Nation.
Thank you. Mr. Bouchard, is there any public forum?
No.
Thank you. We'll go on to 1.5, the approval of the agenda. Are there any additions? Yes, Trustee DeMarco.
So as per 5.6 of policy 7, I'd like to add an in-camera for other topics that a majority of the trustees present feel should be held in private in the public interest.
Thank you. We'll put that as 7.7. In camera session. Any other additions?
The creation of a draft committee under 6.5.
Thank you. 6.5. Are there any deletions to the agenda? Any other changes? And I can call on someone to make a motion of the agenda.
Move that the board approve the agenda as amended.
All those in favor? Passed. The minutes of the meeting, 2.1, I believe everyone's had a chance to go over the minutes. Anything anyone? I will call for someone to make a motion. Trustee Taylor.
I move that the board approve the minutes of the regular meeting held November 29th, 2023 as circular.
Favor? Fine. You. Have a look at the board priorities, goals and priorities. 2023 to 2027. Minute to look them over. You will move on to number 4, board chair report. Short month because we had a late meeting in December. I mean in November. Does anyone have any questions? Board chair, yes, Trustee Marco.
Just wanting to confirm, did you receive an email from ACSTA regarding the SWOT analysis?
Yes, it was after I had sent.
So
Jen. Anything else? To the superintendent's report. Questions regarding the superintendent's report? Trustee Miller.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I only have 3 questions. So I will start with my first, under building relationships, number 2, it's bullet 6. In regards to the city of Leduc with the interagency meeting, what is this? What was the purpose? And did anything come out of these discussions that these trustees should be aware of?
Trustee, I mean Superintendent Bouchard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll have a Superintendent Cardinal speak.
Okay, Assistant Superintendent Cardinal.
So the interagency meeting are a variety of agencies in Leduc that they meet together. They will discuss upcoming issues or current issues. They will also share information. So for example, the police may share or mental health may share. And essentially they connect, they build relationships so that they know who to connect with in each of the agencies. And they also bring any updates from their organizations. This last meeting actually was canceled because this report was prepared ahead of time, it was canceled, and so there wasn't anything that came.
Yeah, right. Yeah, Dr. Miller, I have 2 questions for Seth.
Thank you. Number 5, leading learning, bullet 14. What is the circle? I have something written down, but I can't read my own writing. Restorative, thank you. That's what that is. What are the restorative circles?
Oh, okay, and would that be trustee Cardinal?
Restorative circles are essentially a process that is a restorative practices for schools. And essentially it can be used in a variety of ways. It can be used to create community. It can be used to review information, but it also, the primary use of restorative circles is to restore relationships and to make amends for anything for things that have happened within the school. And there are specific guiding questions that go along with restorative circles that help the process to evolve and to essentially share about what has happened, share how what people were thinking, and then how the people that were affected, how they felt about it. And it's in my mind, it is more of a Catholic a pastoral approach to discipline. And so we've been working on that with administrators, but it's going to be a process over time.
Great question, trustee.
Thank you. I'm gonna throw in a follow-up to that one and add my question. So is that for students, staff, outside families? Just so I'm clear on who that restorative circle process is for.
Yeah, it primarily is for students. It could be for the students and the teachers or educational assistants or whomever was affected by what happened. And sometimes parents can be brought into the process as well if needed.
Thank you. And then my third question. Under school authority and operations, bullet 7, what is the software and what is it for?
Superintendent Bouchard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the Imagine Everything software is a collection of forms creating software. So currently we have a number of forms throughout the division that are held in Google documents, Word documents, etc. So the plan is to automate some of our processes to make them more secure, to allow workflows and forms. So for example, an IPP for a student could be created in educational forms. It could be routed to other teachers, to the parents for input or signature, and so on. So it's just a matter of automating some of our forms and our processes around that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The building effective relationship. See bullet number 4, collaborated with HS for a 2-day fast parenting series on mental wellness. So my question is, will this be for parents or?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll ask Assistant Superintendent Cardinal to answer that question.
So this is a series that's been happening over time. I had referred to it earlier today in regards to a parenting series. This particular series is a 2-part parenting series, and it is it's delivered virtually to the entire division, and the target audience are parents. Yes.
Thank you very much.
That it's on the same building effective. met with the ATA, that's the last part, one bullet, met with the ATA local president to review status of Bill 85, the criminal record, prior to the deadline. So to the benefit of our listeners, can you please elaborate on this criminal recording bill?
Superintendent.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll have Assistant Superintendent Malloy speak to this.
Thank you. On September 1st, 2022, Bill 85, also known as Students First Act, came into effect. What in relation to criminal record checks, what that meant was that for all teachers or teacher leaders, we needed to ensure, all divisions in the province needed to ensure that they had a criminal record check with vulnerable sector included upon hire of each teacher and teacher leader. And then again, every 5 years after, while they're employed in the division. So of course, like all divisions, that was a current practice too. Upon hiring, you had a criminal record check with vulnerable sector. So for our division and for most divisions, the change was to update those criminal record checks with vulnerable sectors for staff that you've had or teachers and teacher leaders that have been in the employ for more than 5 years. So on September 1st, 2022, the Act allowed us to have 16 months to get our files updated. For Star Catholic, that was over 200 teachers and teacher leaders that needed to provide an updated criminal record check with vulnerable sector. So 16 months have passed. January 1st of 2024, it is now in effect, and all to be in compliance, we needed to be have all of those files updated, which I'm happy to say we have. And we have collaborated with the ATA provincially and locally to have a joint messaging about the obligation to have this process take place. So it was good to have that partnership, and I'm happy to say.
Excellent, thank you so much, it's good to know. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have one more question, Madam Chair, sorry. Under ensuring First Nation unity and good education for all students, last bullet, review common practices and protocols required when inviting elders into our school. So my question is, these practice and protocols, are they limited to Massachusetts Nation or it includes the Métis Nation and other? Because I know we have some sporadic Métis Nations around the division.
Superintendent Bouchard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll ask Assistant Superintendent Cardinal to speak to that, ma'am.
So right now we are focusing on the Indigenous communities that are close to Star Catholic. We have not ventured into the Boston with the Métis Nation. Simply, this is a beginning stages with our Indigenous education coach, and she's helping to guide us along this. But yes, that would be in the future. A goal for Star Catholic is to incorporate this.
Thank you.
That's not my question.
Thank you. Anyone else have any other questions for the superintendent? Moving on to the Secretary Treasurer report. And then preference for the Secretary Treasurer.
Management, there's a list of JUPA comments in there in our different communities and the stages that they are at. Beaumont has been, my understanding, a little bit of a backup. Can you give us an update as to where Beaumont is in the JUPA relationship process?
Secretary Treasurer.
Thank you. The model that Beaumont and captain the JUPA is a bit different from the other municipalities, where they hired a consultant. This consultant is, we are like starting from zero. They wanted every partner to get to start the agreement from zero until we get to sign it. So that process is actually earmarked to run from the year, school year up to June. So it's a process, it's a longer process, but I think we are stage by stage, but every stage we are almost done with the nuts and bolts of it. And after New Year, then we will be actually coming up with a campaign which we will start reaching as a whole, as a post program.
Yes, I do.
Trustee Taylor, sir.
That's actually what I was going to ask, where we're at with the whole lunch.
Is there any update? What's the update on the Chupa with the city of Peter? That would be right.
This stage, there is very little that has happened. So at this moment, there isn't anything that is doing.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Secretary Treasurer? And we'll move on to the fiscal accountability report, and I will turn it over to the Secretary Treasurer.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. And as you know, we actually prepare this report indicating where we are at in terms of our financial expenditures. It's one of the roles that was able to oversee that the funds actually for priorities. And as such, we have got a grow in academic Catholic identity, and we actually provide details in terms of the way to life, the expenditures that have actually been met up to the 3 months up to November. And we see here that we have not expected, we will not spend so much at this stage because of some of the activities that are there are not really driven by the months that we are in. Some activities actually are done a little bit later in the year. That we only spend about 16% of our budget in that regard. Similarly, we have also spent about 20%, whilst we should have spent about 25% in our professional development. What I will also say, obviously, when we look at the First Nations, Métis and Inuit, we kind of spend a little bit more, all the same. The first quarter generally is a little bit slower. To see the specialized learning supports, we actually see that we have got about 34%, and generally most of the actuals actually include the salary benefits related to classroom complexities. But actually, I think that aspect of the classroom complexity we have to check it out, because it's actually miscuing the numbers. They are not included in the budget, so it's something that. Which indicate to us that we have generated revenue of 14 million, which is about 26% of the total budget, and most of which is actually funding that we receive from the government, and also the program tax. We also note that also the investment income is also really overshot our budget at this stage. it's really because of those interest rates that we are still in. And on expenses, we have also spent 26%, which is about 40 million from the budget, resulting in an operating surplus of 225,000. So when you look at the revenue that we have generated and that we have received and the expenses that we have had, I think we are quite we can spend almost quite a lot of the 25%, which is kind of what the appendix A gives us more detail in terms of the expenses per the programs that we are in. It gives us more details in terms of the line items that are in the just provide. So it's the same as on appendix B, where we are looking at the schools' decentralized expenses, we also note that some schools have spent quite a good amount. You can see some are already 42%, whilst others are actually like still at these we are not at this stage, we are not quite concerned with these numbers, but we will start looking at situations where schools are spending their monies, especially in the second quarter, and not that we obviously need to ask questions, let's say what's happening, but help to us to carry over those needs into this. That's the
If there were any questions for the Secretary Treasurer regarding this report?
I think that in his report is alluded to something like that. Quite schools that haven't been spending, so these the Secretary Treasurer have made put that in the second quarter. If these lines are still standing as his administration with assistant watch out.
Any other questions from anyone? Trustee Miller?
Thank you. Under specialized learning support, you had mentioned the classroom complexity grant, and it might be skewing the results here. Can you explain a little bit further what you mean by that?
Head Secretary.
And I think it had to, when the grant was coming in, not part of the budget originally.
Yes, yeah. So the classroom complexity grant, it was actually included here as under specialized learning supports. As in the budget, it's not included there, it's counted elsewhere. So I think it's just a miscue of or coding, which we need to sort out, and we need to correct that as in the next report.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? We will go on to number 5.1, the annual insurance report. Turn it over to our Secretary Treasurer.
Thank you. This report, we are actually submitting it to you, and that you, as a board, you need to oversee and ensure that we have adequate insurance policies that cover properties and liabilities that we may have. And we have also analyzed the premium that the cover that we already have, and we also indicated in the process that they had, especially under our buildings and contents, that there was a physical inventory count and coming up with statement of values for our buildings. We also indicated that just to indicate that in terms of the premiums, when compared to last year, we see that there is a 6% increase in the premiums, also under the property availability. But how we look at on the budget, we actually budgeted 508.8 as opposed to what the premium came out. They came out, the actual premiums came out at 12,000, which is a very big. But I want to highlight also in the properties, I'm sure, discussing with the program, I need to understand why that those issues being with our buyers that we experienced in the and people see that for buyers it's not just the ones of continue. And so that risk actually increases. We have also indicated the claims and litigation history that we only have got up 2 cases, active cases, which the board has been raised.
So this is good news,
Yeah.
right? It's part of our good news budget.
Yeah, I hope that it's good news. I think generally our claims history seems to.
Yeah. Any questions regarding the insurance? Trustee Taylor?
This may be off topic, Nick, but the fundraising foundation, say on, right? Do they need their own insurance or would they be covering the this?
If it is a fundraising society, they are a separate entity from us and they need care of their own insurance.
But if they're not a separate entity, if they're just part of the school board, school council. Yes, Trustee Hill.
Just some, I guess, clarifying questions, looking at this chart to help me understand it. The officer's liability, that's the school board, that's the board of trustees, is that correct?
Yeah, it's about trustees and senior management.
Okay. And then under liability, this is for legal cases, like the actual legal, not the legal expenses.
Okay.
Or is it?
This is not necessarily legal, but this is to do with that. We may actually have in one of our schools, we may actually have somebody to report. They can claim on the stars. We may also have our kids who also go for the treatments. And they may actually, the parents may actually claim something. So there is that particular insurance. So it's really to cover for any possible claims for negligence, especially. That's so that's a general liability. It's general liability.
So that's no matter where this accident happens.
Yes, but obviously negligence is legal. I think that's the general principle.
Any questions? Questions, anybody? On 5.2. So 5.2 is to determine sister board municipality and MLN meetings for 2024. So we need to just decide if we want to have sister board meeting in 2024, and municipality meeting and MLA meetings. So does anyone have something? We don't need to hear what everybody wants to say.
I'm here, we plan every year, for the weekly back in state to converse our partners to see if there are items to discuss. We just went through the first round last year, to meet and greet some of our But schedule some of those meetings that we already have.
So I'm thinking as far as sister board meetings, and if there's really something on the agenda, we don't need one right away. But the MLA meetings, because they're new MLAs, we haven't had a meeting with all of our MLAs. So maybe that would be something we would like to be scheduled. Trustee Miller?
Thank you. I would agree in both areas, Madam Chair. So the sister boards, let's see if we need to discuss something, and the MLA. I think that would be a good idea to try and schedule something in spring while the city is happening in Burlington.
I agree. So does anyone else have anything to say about the MLA meeting?
I would like to see an MLA.
Trustee Burke would like to see an MLA. Trustee Taylor would too. Trustee Dinner?
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
Trustee DeMarco? Yes. Trustee Edmund, for the MLA meeting? Yes. So I will leave that to Superintendent Bouchard. Why they're still C up on there.
Yeah.
My thoughts on municipality, there has to be a good reason why we need to make it a municipality. We've met with Beaumont quite a few times because there's a very good reason. So that's my thoughts on it. It needs to be. Trustee Miller.
Thank you. I know it was a part of the agenda when you mentioned municipalities. That maybe it's too early, what is the process coming closer to municipal elections to start processes and conversations? Just to confirm, is that next year's calendar that those would happen, maybe with Secretary Treasurer?
I'm thinking, can we ask Mr. Bouchard, is that usually just the year before an election?
If you're referring to the partnerships that we enter into with the municipalities over elections,
Yes.
that is handled by the Secretary Treasurer and their administration, but there would be no purpose for the board to meet with the council or Reeves in those areas.
That would be handled by the Secretary Treasurer. Okay, good to know. So we're pretty clear on this. We'll head with the MLA, but the other two, we'll see if there's something that's needed. And sometimes it's specific to an area, more so than every area. Then we move on to action items. 6.1, policy and committee of the board. So someone would like to read the motion and we'll make a discussion. Go ahead, Trustee.
That the board give policy 8, committees of the board, the final reading as presented, and that the revised policy on the health for the division.
Thank you. Does anyone need to speak to this? Trustee, no.
Sorry, if you could give me a second, I thought in the minutes it said first reading.
We already have them.
We
We did that last time.
But I believe that just
We did first and second on the.
but yes, it was first and second, now that.
If something you can speak to on this slide. Okay. Then I will call the question. All those in favor? It's passed. Thank you for calling the 8. Committees of the board. 6.2, this is Drayton Valley Community Scholarship Trust Society, and I will turn this over to Trustee Niven.
So I move that the board approve a donation to the Drayton Valley Community Scholarship Trust Society in the amount of $500.
Would anyone like to speak to this motion? Yeah. Yeah, I would just like to speak, this has been a standard for Drayton Valley, and I think it is very appreciated by the community. So no one else has anything, then I will call the question. All those in favor? That is passed. Move on to 6.3, transportation, this is Lacombe County. I'm going to turn this over to Superintendent Bouchard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So you have in your package a backgrounder related to this item. Just as a bit of a reminder and a recap of information, you'll recall that Wolf Creek School Division did a reconfiguration of their boundaries, specifically below Township 400, whereby they would direct all those students to Blackfalds. That impacts our families, obviously, because they will no longer have the means to get to Lacombe. The one exception is that should there be a high school student from Wolf Creek who wishes to finish grade 12 at Lacombe Comp, they can be grandfathered, and for 2 additional years, Wolf Creek will transport those students to Lacombe Comp. That can serve us should there be a grandfather student. Our students in the area would be bused as well to Father Lacombe with the Lacombe Comp students. So that is a possibility. We are told by Wolf Creek Schools that they have a firm deadline of January 15th for their students currently in grade 10 to indicate if they are finishing their last 2 years at Lacombe Comp, specifically the students below Township Road 400. So that is some updated information. There are some scenarios in your backgrounder whereby the board may wish to consider its options regarding those students and families below Township Road 400. The first scenario is should Wolf Creek grandfather or have grandfathered students and bus for those 2 years. The board may entertain the first scenario whereby we'll jump on that bus for 2 years, and then in the 3rd year and moving forward, we would bus those families. In scenario 2, again, there are grandfathered students. The board may say that they do not wish to enter into contracted bus service in year 3 and beyond. However, they would provide, or the board would provide the transportation grant to those families. The 3rd scenario would be that the board would direct administration to put into place contracted bus service starting this September. That is the 3rd scenario, irregardless of whether they're grandfathered students or Wolf Creek or not. The 4th scenario would be that the board does not direct administration to put any busing in place, but that contracted services would be in place. Not as part of one of the scenarios, but listed on the first page of that backgrounder, the board could just choose to leave in place the existing motion on the books from last spring, whereby a threshold of 10 students below Township Road 400, that threshold would have to be met before the division would put a bus into place. There is some notes there about ride times. So the first is that, of course, this is just a mock route that has been done up by our transportation department, where it's anticipated the furthest route or ride time for a student would be 80 minutes. Also in the backgrounder are some associated costs with each scenario. So at the bottom of the page, it does show you there that we did last spring get an estimated cost of about $75,000. We know that there would be some revenues associated with transporting students, especially now with the new regulations where students can, without formed areas, direct their transportation dollars to the division that is transporting their students here, regardless of formed area or not. So there are revenues. In the first scenario, the revenues would be about $41,639, leaving a shortfall of approximately $34,000. The second scenario would be a revenue of $54,850, a shortfall of about $21,000. And then the last scenario, or sorry, the last one where we would pick up all the students below 400 that we currently have, would generate a revenue of $77,000, and actually would result in a surplus of about $1,000. There is a caveat at the top of the last page. All of this, of course, is on condition that we can find a contracted company or a company that wishes to bus our students. There was interest last spring, so we would assume that would still be the case. However, depending on the board's action, we would have to once again pursue or not pursue that once we have some direction from the board. There are a couple of possible motions. The first one talks about putting in bus service once Wolf Creek says that they can no longer bus those students. So that typically would be in the third year. The second scenario is that the board does not wish to entertain providing contracted bus service. So once Wolf Creek busing ceases, then there would no longer be a Start Cap or Wolf Creek bus for those students. So I'll turn it over to you, Madam Chair, for conversation. I'd be happy to answer any questions. I hope that the background was clear, but if it wasn't, my apologies, but I'll be happy to answer questions.
Thank you so much. The backgrounder was very clear, the overall was very clear. Does any of the trustees feel that they need some clarification on the backgrounder? Trustee Miller?
Just wondering how many students this affects.
So in this model here, it depends which scenario you're looking at. Right now, we have about 13 students below 400. I think it would be the 13 to 16 students.
If you were looking at the last scenario where it was 349, 549, and 220.
Yeah.
I don't know, how many would that be?
In that scenario there, we are picking up some students in subdivisions closest to Lacombe that are above 400. Township Road 400, and there we're starting to talk between 30 and 40 students. And that's why the revenue for that scenario is a little bit higher, quite a bit higher.
And that didn't change because they were all outside of that 2.4. So that didn't change with the walk. Thank you. Any other clarification you need, Trustee Miller?
Thank you. In reading the suggested motions, is there any need to, if I were to select the first motion, would I need to clarify which scenario would be required?
I think we would have to,
Because there's different funding for different scenarios there that would impact.
maybe critique it a little bit, the motion.
Yeah, that's a good question, Madam Chair. I think the answer to that is, if that was the direction the board chose to, move forward with, then I think it would narrow it down to scenario 1 and 2, and we could craft a motion specific to that. Yeah, so the first possible motion is definitely related to scenario 1 and 2.
And if there's one related to scenario 3, someone could make that motion.
Scenario 3, yeah, that is unrelated to those two possible ones. I guess my question to the Board of Trustees would be, if Wolf Creek will transport students for 2 years for us, why would we proceed with our own busing right away?
So my question would be for clarification, if within that 2 years, those children that were attending the home comp left or whatever, does that mean that we no longer have bus service for our kids?
Well,
Or is this totally dependent on Wolf Creek, those kids?
if they're grandfathered students, we're assuming they would finish. If they didn't, and then there were no longer grandfathered kids, we'd be back to the scenario of no grandfathered kids.
That's
And then we could have a conversation at that.
That's why.
My question would be the same line of thought. The motions we have on the books, we believe that motion. Because I know we're talking about 400 this year, are we able to pick up our kids from the 400? We leave motion, previous motion.
Sorry, Madam Chair, I'm not clear on the question.
So I believe that you were asking if we leave the one that's already on the books, can we pick up you're thinking about the regular Catholic students?
Yeah, the 400, wherever it was 30 more.
Madam Chair, the existing motion does not speak to the students in the Red Deer Catholic formed area or in the subdivisions closest to Lacombe. It only deals with specifically the 7 or 8 students in the southeastern portion of the county.
So if we were to make a new motion, the correct motion would then go, you have to make a motion to take that motion out, or how does that work?
Madam Chair, the most recent motion is what
Stands.
that's the latest direction from the board.
Wish to make a motion. Trustee State, Terry?
I'd like to make a motion for,
Would you want to state the areas within that motion?
yeah, sure.
So we'll need to type up the motion so we can see it. Could do that. Just copy that.
Sorry, it's hard how to express on the bus service to But also, I guess I can't make them. Take everything's here.
So you can add,
Okay, I can add pending security contract.
right, and we would also have to add, I believe we would have to add for students in 349, 549, 2160, RDC, Ironwood, and Mackenzie Ranch.
Okay.
To make it into the surplus as far as the potential revenue. Sorry. You can go back in. Trustee, Superintendent Shire.
Madam Chair, might I suggest a short recess while we craft that motion?
Good idea. Let's take a short recess while we craft the motion, 10 minutes. We should do that. We'll take a short recess until 3 o'clock.